The world stands at a crossroads where shadows lengthen, storms gather, and a great shaking seems inevitable. Behind the curtain of politics, war games, and economic maneuvers, there is a deeper story unfolding, a story written in prophecy, etched in the hearts of nations, and whispered through the corridors of history. It is the story of three mighty powers, America, Russia, and China, whose destinies now collide in ways that will define the future of humanity. The prophetic showdown is not merely about armies or weapons, but about the very soul of nations, the direction of civilization, and the fate of generations to come. America, the once unchallenged superpower, rises and stumbles like a giant both, weary and restless. Its foundation, once rooted in ideals of freedom and faith, now trembles under division, corruption, and moral confusion. The strength that once inspired the world has become a source of internal strife, with its people torn between the memory of greatness and the uncertainty of tomorrow. To many, America is still the light upon the hill, the beacon of liberty, the nation that held back tyranny and reshaped the world order. Yet in the prophetic script, even great empires have their appointed time, and the signs suggest that America is entering a season of reckoning. Russia, ancient in its identity, fierce in its pride, and driven by a vision of restored glory, moves like a bear awakened from slumber. Its history is written in blood and resilience, a saga of empires rising and falling, always returning with a sense of destiny. Under its modern leadership, Russia casts itself as the guardian of tradition, a counterweight to Western power, and a voice that challenges the dominance of America. Yet prophecy often warns of those who exalt themselves through force, who use iron and fire to carve their name upon the world. Russia seeks influence not only through strength of arms, but through narratives, alliances, and the claim of defending values under siege. But deep beneath the surface, the shadow of ambition and the hunger for power threaten to pull it into a confrontation larger than itself. China, the dragon of the East, has emerged from centuries of struggle to become a formidable force on the global stage. With unmatched economic growth, vast technological reach, and a disciplined pursuit of power, it now rivals the might of America and stands as a challenge to the old order. The dragon's wings have spread across continents, binding nations through trade, infrastructure, and debt. Its eyes are fixed not only on dominance, but on reshaping the very systems that govern the world. Prophecy has long spoken of the kings of the East, a power that will rise in the final chapters of human history, crossing boundaries and shaking nations. In China's ascent, many see the foreshadowing of this great unveiling. When America, Russia, and China move upon the stage of history simultaneously, the collision is not random, but prophetic. These are not mere rivals. They represent archetypes, forces, and destinies foretold through patterns stretching back millennia. America embodies the fading light of the West. Russia embodies the strength and ferocity of the North. And China embodies the rise of the East. Their conflict is not simply geopolitical, it is spiritual, historical, and inevitable. The clash begins not always with open war, but with whispers, threats, and movements in the shadows. Trade wars, sanctions, alliances, and proxy battles become the opening moves in a much greater confrontation. Yet beneath these strategies lies a spiritual conflict, one that drives nations toward their roles in the prophetic narrative. America's division weakens it from within, Russia's aggression isolates it from without, and China's ambition drives it ever forward. Together, they form a triangle of tension that tightens year by year, pushing the world toward a moment of explosive consequence. History offers echoes of this moment. In the days of empires, Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome rose and fell, each believing their power unshakable, each collapsing when pride, corruption, or divine judgment overtook them. Now, the modern powers follow the same pattern. For America, the warning lies in its drift from the values that once gave it strength. For Russia, the danger lies in overreaching, beyond what it can sustain. For China, the temptation lies in the pride of rapid ascension, believing that nothing can hinder its momentum. Yet prophecy reminds us that every empire meets its limit. Every power confronts the higher hand of destiny. The people of the world sense the unease, from the markets of Asia to the streets of Europe, from the heartland of America to the vast steppes of Russia. There is a tension in the air, a feeling that something unprecedented is about to unfold. Wars and rumors of wars dominate the headlines, and the shifting alliances of nations hint at storms approaching. The rise of nuclear threats, cyber warfare, and artificial intelligence only deepens the uncertainty. Each new development feels less like progress and more like the tightening of a snare, drawing humanity toward a crisis foretold long ago. America looks outward and sees its rivals gaining ground, but its greatest threat lies within. Division tears at its fabric, political, cultural, and spiritual. Families, communities, and even faith are fractured. A nation once known for unity now struggles with identity, questioning its own purpose and destiny. Such division is not merely political. It is prophetic, a sign of a kingdom at war with itself, vulnerable to collapse. America's enemies watch, not always needing to strike directly, for they understand that a divided giant can fall by its own weight. Russia moves with aggression, pressing against borders, seeking influence in regions once lost, asserting itself as a power that must be reckoned with. Yet each step draws it deeper into isolation, conflict, and enmity. The bear may roar, but in doing so, it awakens the opposition of nations far stronger than itself. Still, in prophecy, the bear plays a role. It pushes the world toward alignment, conflict, and eventual reckoning. Its actions ignite fires that spread beyond control, leading to outcomes it may not have intended but cannot escape. China builds quietly, strategically, with patience unmatched. While others fight in open arenas, it expands through trade routes, technologies, and subtle influence. It plays the long game, weaving its power into the economies of nations, binding them with golden chains. Yet prophecy warns that the kings of the East will not remain hidden forever. Their rise will bring upheaval on a scale unimaginable, reshaping the balance of the world. In China's ascent lies both the promise of power and the danger of overreach, for pride often blinds even the most disciplined rulers. The prophetic showdown is not only about leaders and governments, but about the people caught in the tide. Millions upon millions will feel the consequences of decisions made in distant halls of power. Soldiers will march, economies will collapse, and families will suffer as the giants of the earth collide. Yet even in this turmoil, prophecy speaks of purpose, that through the shaking, the true nature of nations will be revealed, and the destiny of humanity will be brought to light. This is only the beginning, the opening movement in a narrative that spans time and space. The showdown is not a single battle, but a series of confrontations, each escalating, each pulling the world closer to its appointed hour. America, Russia, and China will not step back. Their paths are set, their destinies interwoven. The world watches, uncertain yet unable to look away. For deep down, there is an awareness that history itself is converging in this moment. The world does not drift into chaos without signs. The signs are all around, though most refuse to see them. Prophecy often whispers before it roars, warning through tremors before the great earthquake arrives. The financial tremors have already been felt, shaking economies with debt, inflation, and uncertainty. The military tremors echo in conflicts on the edges of great powers, in proxy wars, in contested seas, in disputed lands. The cultural tremors resound in the moral confusion of societies, where truth is redefined and foundations crumble. Yet, when America, Russia, and China stand locked in rivalry, these tremors do not remain small, they magnify into global storms. America watches the horizon with unease, aware that its dominance is no longer unchallenged. Its military is vast, its technology advanced, yet its enemies have studied its every move, seeking not to overpower directly, but to bleed it through countless smaller cuts. Cyber intrusions pierce its infrastructure, propaganda exploits its divisions, and economic maneuvers threaten its stability. The giant is still strong, but it is distracted, tired, and uncertain of its purpose. For a nation that once marched confidently as the leader of the free world, to stumble now is prophetic. It reflects the pattern of empires in decline, the slow erosion that comes not from without, but from within. Russia strikes boldly where it can, reminding the world of its teeth. It knows it cannot match America in wealth or China in economy, but it thrives in conflict, in testing boundaries, in exploiting moments of weakness. Like a bear, it lunges when opportunity arises, even if it risks wounds in the process. For Russia, the quest is not simply about land or resources, but about legacy. Its leaders see themselves as heirs to an empire that refuses to die, to a destiny written in fire and resilience. The prophetic role of Russia has always been one of disruption, pushing against the order of the world, forcing confrontation, dragging nations into conflict. And in this age, the bear has awakened once more, unwilling to slumber while others seize the future. China's rise is quieter, yet more relentless. Its strategy is not always direct war, but encirclement. It invests, builds, buys, and binds, roads and ports, satellites and networks, influence and control. The dragon weaves its web carefully, waiting for the day when its grip is undeniable. Yet prophecy warns that the kings of the East will not only rise, they will march. For now, China prefers patience, but its patience is not infinite. Beneath its calm exterior lies a burning desire for supremacy, a conviction that its time has come. And when the dragon believes its strength is enough, it will not hesitate to reveal its full power. The collision of these three powers is not accidental, for prophecy speaks of nations rising against nation, kingdom against kingdom, wars, and rumors of wars. It tells of powers from the north, armies from the east, and nations whose arrogance draws them into judgment. The alignment of America, Russia, and China in this time is not chance. It is a fulfillment, a sign that the world approaches a season, long foretold. The movements of their leaders, their ambitions and failures, their clashes and alliances are but threads woven into a tapestry designed before they were born. The danger is not only in open war, but in the escalation that no one can stop once it begins. A spark in Eastern Europe can ignite a fire across the continents. A confrontation in the Pacific can unravel alliances built over decades. A cyber attack in one region can cripple the systems of another. Prophecy warns that when the great powers rise in conflict, the world will tremble, for their strength is such that no corner of the earth remains untouched. The people sense it. In cities across America, there is unease about the future, doubts about leadership, fear of collapse. In Russia, pride mingles with anxiety, for though the people celebrate strength, they also bear the cost of sanctions, isolation, and war. In China, optimism in growth is tempered by the weight of control, the fear of dissent, and the burden of maintaining a system that demands loyalty at all costs. Humanity is caught in the balance, nations rising not merely as governments, but as instruments of prophecy. America seeks to remind the world of its strength, deploying fleets, expanding alliances, and warning rivals not to cross certain lines. Yet every warning draws a counter, every alliance provokes a challenge. The giant can roar, but its roar no longer silences the earth. Russia hears the roar and pushes forward anyway, testing how far the giant is willing to go. China hears the roar and calculates, always calculating, deciding when to strike, when to wait, when to bind another nation closer in its web. The showdown is not yet a battle, but it is already a war of wills. Behind the leaders of these nations lies something greater. It is not only political strategy or national interest, but spiritual influence. Prophecy teaches that nations are driven by forces unseen, powers that shape their destinies. Pride, ambition, fear, and deception are not merely human emotions. They are currents stirred by forces beyond human sight. America, with its divisions, becomes vulnerable to deception. Russia, with its aggression, becomes vulnerable to pride. China, with its ambition, becomes vulnerable to overconfidence. In these vulnerabilities lie the seeds of their downfall, for prophecy is not kind to those who exalt themselves. The showdown intensifies with each passing year. The lines of trade are weaponized, the seas become contested, the skies fill with the hum of weapons meant to deter and intimidate. And yet, despite all their power, the nations are not in control of their own destiny. They believe themselves masters of the earth, but prophecy declares otherwise, that the rise and fall of nations is in the hand of the Almighty, and that even the greatest empires must bow to the purposes of eternity. The ordinary man and woman may feel powerless in such a time, yet they are the ones who will endure the cost of this prophetic collision. They will see economies falter, currencies weaken, jobs vanish. They will hear the sound of war not on distant screens, but in their own streets. They will face shortages, fear, and uncertainty. Yet prophecy offers them a choice, whether to place their trust in the crumbling systems of man or in the higher power that governs all. For when the nations rage and the kings of the earth rise in defiance, prophecy reminds us that there is still a throne above all thrones, a kingdom that cannot be shaken. The storm grows. America, Russia, and China edge closer to confrontation, each unwilling to yield, each believing its cause is righteous, each determined to outlast the other. Yet in their pride, they do not see the trap closing in around them. History shows us that wars once begun rarely end as planned. Leaders imagine victory, yet reap only destruction. Empires believe themselves unshakable, yet collapse in a single generation. The prophetic showdown is not about who wins, but about what is revealed, that the powers of this world, no matter how great, are but dust compared to the eternal. The nations prepare, fleets gather, armies train, alliances harden, strategies are drawn. The stage is set for a conflict unlike any before, one that prophecy foresaw but humanity refuses to accept. The watchers understand what is unfolding, for the signs are unmistakable. The world is not simply entering another age of rivalry, it is approaching the climax of history, the moment when the destinies of nations converge and the future of humanity is decided. The horizon grows darker with every passing day, and though the world attempts to cloak itself in illusions of peace, prosperity, and progress, the storm clouds cannot be hidden. Leaders speak of diplomacy, of dialogue, of stability, yet their actions betray their words. Armies are moved, weapons are tested, sanctions are imposed, and alliances are fortified. It is as though the nations cannot resist the gravity pulling them toward confrontation. For prophecy declares that such a time must come when the great powers of the earth clash in an unavoidable collision. America stands at the center of this unfolding drama, but it is no longer the undisputed leader it once was. It is torn within itself, battling internal decay as much as external threats. Its politics are poisoned by division, its culture fragmented, its people uncertain of what their nation truly stands for. Prophecy reveals that a house divided cannot stand, and America is a house deeply divided. Its rivals see this weakness, and though they may not yet strike openly, they are emboldened to push harder, knowing that the once mighty colossus stumbles. On its own path, Russia advances like a power determined to be feared, not loved. It does not care if the world condemns its actions, for condemnation does not weaken its resolve. It thrives in resistance, in opposition, in conflict. Its leaders believe they are destined to restore what was lost, to challenge the dominance of the West, and to reassert the pride of their nation. Yet prophecy warns of the danger of the proud, of those who lift themselves high only to be cast down. Russia pushes forward, yet with every advance it awakens a greater opposition. In provoking, it sets in motion forces it cannot control. China waits with patience, though its presence is already felt everywhere. Its dragon coils around economies, infrastructure, and technology, strangling slowly but deliberately. Its leaders think in centuries rather than decades, in strategies that span generations. To them, time is an ally, not an enemy. Yet patience does not mean passivity. The dragon grows restless as it watches the instability of the world. It knows that opportunities come rarely in history, and when the moment is ripe, it will strike decisively. Prophecy speaks of kings from the east who will march, and when they do, their numbers and power will be unmatched. The world has not yet seen the full extent of China's rise, but it will. As these three powers circle each other, smaller nations are caught in between. They align themselves with one side or another, hoping to survive the storm. Some look to America for protection, others to Russia for partnership, others to China for prosperity. But in aligning with giants, they bind themselves to the fate of those giants, unable to escape when the collision comes. Prophecy makes clear that the shaking of the great powers will not leave the smaller untouched, for the waves of conflict will sweep across all nations. The air grows tense with rumors of war. Skirmishes on distant borders threaten to escalate. Disputes over islands, airspace, and cyber attacks become sparks that could ignite infernos. Leaders assure their people that they can control the escalation, that diplomacy will prevail, but history tells another story. Once the great wheels of war begin to turn, they grind forward relentlessly, consuming all in their path. The prophetic showdown does not ask permission. It forces itself upon the stage. America's people are restless. They sense that their nation is not what it once was, that something has shifted beneath their feet. They see the corruption of values, the erosion of unity, the rise of hostility, even among themselves. Prophecy shows that when a nation abandons its foundation, it crumbles from within. The people cry for renewal, for revival, for a return to greatness, but the divisions run too deep. Even as enemies circle from outside, America's greatest enemy lies within, its own self-destruction. Russia's people endure hardship with stoicism, for they are no strangers to suffering. Their history has prepared them for endurance, for sacrifice, for survival against all odds. Yet their pride in their nation can blind them to the reality of their leaders' ambitions. They cheer strength even as it brings them into peril, not realizing that the bear's roar draws hunters from every direction. Prophecy reveals that those who live by the sword will also perish by it, and Russia's obsession with strength may lead it into destruction. China's people live under the weight of discipline and control, sacrificing freedom for prosperity, liberty for stability. Many prosper, but many remain silent, aware that dissent brings consequences. The dragon's people march in step, proud of their nation's rise, convinced that the future belongs to them. Yet prophecy warns of the kings of the East not as liberators, but as forces of upheaval. Their march will not only challenge the world, but also cost their own people dearly, for the ambitions of rulers always demand the sacrifice of the ruled. The prophetic showdown grows closer with every crisis, every miscalculation, every clash of pride. America cannot bear to lose its influence. Russia cannot resist the urge to expand, and China cannot contain its hunger for supremacy. Each believes it can shape the world to its will, yet prophecy teaches that no empire has ever succeeded in holding the earth. Babylon fell, Persia fell, Greece fell, Rome fell, and so too will the empires of today. The stage is not theirs to command, for a greater hand directs the script. The conflict between these three is more than political. It is cosmic. It mirrors the ancient struggle between light and darkness, between pride and humility, between kingdoms of man and the kingdom of God. Each nation represents more than itself. America represents the fading light of the West, a light once bright, but now flickering. Russia represents the fierce power of the North, relentless yet reckless. China represents the disciplined strength of the East, patient yet ambitious. Their clash is not random, but a reflection of patterns that prophecy has long warned would rise in the final days. The world is entering a time of testing unlike any before. Technology has given the nations weapons capable of destroying the Earth. Many times over, artificial intelligence now calculates war in ways humans cannot predict. Information moves faster than truth can catch it. Deception spreads like wildfire, and the line between reality and illusion blurs. In such a world, the prophetic showdown is not only fought with missiles and tanks, but with lies, fear, and manipulation. The battlefield is not only land and sea, but also the minds and hearts of billions. Yet prophecy also offers hope in the midst of judgment. Though nations rage and leaders boast, though wars erupt and economies crumble, there remains a higher power that oversees all. The prophetic showdown is not the end, but the unveiling, the revelation of the weakness of human pride and the futility of empires. It reminds the world that no matter how strong America, Russia, or China may appear, they are dust compared to eternity. Their rise, their fall, their conflict, all serve a purpose beyond themselves, to awaken humanity to the truth that no nation can save the world, only the hand of God can. As the clash draws nearer, the nations are blind to their own peril. America believes it can recover its greatness. Russia believes it can expand its influence. China believes it can seize the future. Yet all three are caught in the same trap: the illusion that power guarantees security, that ambition ensures destiny, that pride protects from downfall. Prophecy shatters these illusions, declaring that the higher they rise, the greater their fall will be. The earth trembles under the weight of what is coming. Leaders hold conferences, diplomats sign papers, generals prepare strategies, but none can stop the tide. The prophetic showdown is not a possibility, it is a certainty. America, Russia, and China are bound to this destiny, drawn into conflict by forces greater than themselves. The world watches in fear, yet prophecy declares that all of this was foretold, that the end of one age must come before the birth of another. The clock of history ticks closer to midnight, and though humanity pretends that it still has time, the hands of prophecy move with unrelenting certainty. The earth is restless, the nations are uneasy, and the people sense that the future no longer belongs to peace but to confrontation. America, Russia, and China are no longer distant rivals merely posturing. They are adversaries circling one another like predators, waiting for the moment when hesitation gives way to the strike. America clings to its alliances, seeking reassurance that the world still believes in its leadership. Yet behind the smiling handshakes and official statements, doubt festers. Allies wonder if America can truly be trusted to stand firm, to endure, to sacrifice as it once did. They remember its victories of the past, but they also see its division, its inconsistency, its wavering will. Prophecy reminds us that the glory of nations fades, and the loyalty of allies is never eternal. When the storm arrives, every nation will choose for itself, and many who once marched beside America may abandon it in its hour of greatest need. Russia calculates its risks with boldness, convinced that the world underestimates its resolve. Its leaders thrive on confrontation, believing that fear is the greatest weapon they possess. And indeed, fear has worked. Nations hesitate, markets tremble, leaders second-guess themselves. Yet fear is a double-edged sword. It unites enemies against the one who wields it. It provokes reactions far greater than anticipated. It turns isolation into inevitability. Russia believes it can control the storm it stirs, but prophecy teaches that those who stir the whirlwind will be consumed by it. China advances in silence, weaving its influence deeper and deeper into the systems of the world. It does not need to conquer by force what it can control through economy, technology, and persuasion. Yet the dragon's ambition is not satisfied with quiet dominance. It longs for recognition, for open supremacy, for a future where none can challenge its will. The kings of the East do not remain in the shadows forever. They emerge with power, with armies, with declarations that cannot be ignored. The day will come when China will no longer be content with patience, and the world will discover that Its rise was preparation for a march that prophecy has long foreseen. The prophetic showdown sharpens in places where these powers collide indirectly. America and Russia test one another on contested ground, each supporting allies and proxies in wars that rage in regions far from their own borders. China and America clash over seas and trade, each maneuvering to secure the future while denying the other its ambitions. Russia and China strengthen their ties, united by common opposition to the West, yet wary of each other's true motives. These rivalries form a web of tension so intricate that a single spark could unravel it all. The ordinary citizen goes about daily life, unaware of the scale of the storm gathering above them. They watch the news, they hear the rumors, they feel the unease, but they do not realize how fragile the balance has become. A single miscalculation, a single clash of ships at sea, a single cyber attack on a critical system could spiral into escalation. Once the dominoes begin to fall, they cannot be stopped. Prophecy reveals that in the final days, wars will erupt suddenly, spreading faster than anyone can contain, consuming nations in their fury. America's strength lies in its innovation, its creativity, its enduring spirit, yet its weakness lies in its pride and division. It believes itself invincible because of past victories, yet prophecy warns that yesterday's triumphs cannot guarantee tomorrow's survival. Russia's strength lies in its resilience and boldness, but its weakness lies in arrogance and overreach. China's strength lies in patience and discipline, but its weakness lies in pride and the illusion of control. Each nation carries within itself the seeds of its own downfall, and prophecy ensures that when they collide, those seeds will bear fruit. The spiritual dimension of this conflict cannot be ignored. Prophecy shows that behind the movements of armies and the ambitions of rulers are forces unseen, powers of darkness that drive men to pride, to violence, to destruction. These powers whisper into the ears of leaders, convincing them that their cause is just, that their destiny is assured, that nothing can stand in their way. Yet the end of all such deceptions is the same: ruin. The prophetic showdown is not simply a clash of nations, but a war between truth and lies, humility and pride, light and darkness. As America struggles with its identity, Russia pushes for dominance, and China prepares for supremacy, the rest of the world braces for impact. Nations in Europe feel the bear's breath on their borders. Nations in Asia feel the dragon's shadow over their skies. Nations in the Middle East feel the tremors of the giant's faltering steps. No continent is safe from the ripple of this conflict, for prophecy tells us that in the final days, all nations will be drawn into the shaking. Leaders speak of avoiding war, yet every move they make brings war closer. Military exercises, sanctions, alliances, treaties, all are meant to deter, yet they only deepen suspicion and harden resolve. It is as though the nations are building a tower of tension, brick by brick, higher and higher, until it must inevitably collapse under its own weight. The prophetic showdown cannot be avoided because it is written, and what is written cannot be undone. The people cry for peace, yet peace is taken from the earth. They hope for prosperity, yet economies tremble under the strain of uncertainty. They long for security, yet find themselves surrounded by instability. These cries echo the words of prophecy, that in the final days men will say peace and safety, yet sudden destruction will come upon them. America, Russia, and China may speak of peace, but their actions lead only to war. The stage is nearly set. The armies are ready, the weapons prepared, the alliances drawn, the strategies calculated. Yet even the leaders who believe themselves in control are only actors upon a stage greater than they understand. Prophecy declares that the destinies of nations are not determined by human wisdom, but by divine decree. America may plan, Russia may scheme, China may calculate, but all are subject to the higher hand that directs history. The collision grows inevitable. America fears losing its dominance, Russia craves restored glory, China hungers for supremacy. None will yield, none will step back, none will surrender their ambitions. Pride has blinded them, ambition has ensnared them, and prophecy has ordained their clash. The world watches with dread, for it knows that when giants collide, the earth itself trembles. And so, the prophetic showdown approaches, not as a possibility, but as a certainty. The nations march toward destiny, unaware that the road they travel leads not to victory, but to judgment. The dragon, the bear, and the giant stand poised for conflict, and when they strike, the world will never be the same. The world stands on the edge of a precipice, staring into a darkness that seems both inevitable and unstoppable. The prophetic showdown between America, Russia, and China has grown from whispers into thunder, from maneuverings into inevitability. The nations have played their roles, driven by pride, ambition, fear, and the hidden forces that stir them. They have circled one another like titans, and now the weight of their collision hangs in the air like a storm ready to break. America trembles under the strain of its divisions, yet it clings desperately to the memory of greatness. Its leaders insist that it can still command the world, yet the world no longer listens as it once did. The giant is weary, burdened with debt, corruption, and strife, and though its power is vast, its will is fractured. Its destiny is not to remain forever unchallenged, but to face the truth of prophecy, that no empire built on human strength can stand forever. Russia roars, proud and unyielding, convinced that destiny favors its boldness. It reaches for glory, forcing its way into conflicts and demanding recognition as a power that cannot be ignored. Yet each step deeper into confrontation drags it closer to isolation, ruin, and judgment. The bear believes itself indestructible, but prophecy whispers otherwise, that those who rise by aggression will fall by it, that those who glorify themselves will be brought low. Russia's defiance is its crown, but it will become its chain. China waits no longer in silence, for its ambition can no longer be contained. The dragon spreads its wings, prepared to march with an army and an influence the world has never seen. It believes that the future belongs to it, that centuries of humiliation are being avenged, that the destiny of the East is to dominate the earth. Yet prophecy has spoken of the kings of the East, not as liberators, but as a force that brings upheaval, destruction, and the march toward the final hour. The dragon's rise is not salvation, but a sign, the sign that the last chapter is near. Together, these three powers embody the arrogance of humanity's final age. America stands as the fading light of the West, Russia as the fierce roar of the North, and China as the relentless advance of the East. Their conflict is not coincidence but prophecy, their ambitions not accidents but instruments in the unfolding of a divine script. They march not toward peace, but toward judgment, and the world cannot escape the consequences. Smaller nations are dragged into the conflict, economies collapse under the strain, and people everywhere feel the tremors. The seas roar with fleets, the skies darken with war machines. The earth shakes with armies on the move. Yet beyond the clash of weapons lies the deeper truth. The shaking of the nations is the shaking of humanity itself. Prophecy tells us that when nations exalt themselves, when pride becomes their foundation, when ambition blinds them, the end is certain. Babylon fell, Persia fell, Greece fell, Rome fell, and so too shall the powers of today. America, Russia, and China may believe themselves eternal, but they are dust. Their towers will crumble, their armies will fade, their leaders will pass, for the kingdoms of this world are temporary, and only the eternal kingdom remains. For the people, the time of decision is now. They cannot place their trust in governments that falter, in leaders who deceive, in economies that collapse. They must lift their eyes beyond the storm, beyond the clash of nations, beyond the prophetic showdown, to the one kingdom that cannot be shaken. Prophecy is not merely a warning of destruction, but an invitation to hope, a reminder that though the earth trembles, there is a throne above it all. The prophetic showdown does not end with the triumph of America, or Russia, or China. It ends with their failure, their collapse, their exposure. It ends with the world realizing that no human power can save it, that no empire can rule it forever, that no ambition can secure it. The end of the showdown is not victory, but judgment. And, yet, in that judgment lies the unveiling of truth. The fall of empires clears the way for the rise of the eternal. The collapse of pride makes way for the revelation of humility. The destruction of the kingdoms of men makes way for the kingdom of God. This is the ultimate prophecy, that when the nations rage and the kings of the earth take their stand, they do so only to be broken, only to be silenced, only to be reminded that the earth is not theirs to command. The dragon will fall, the bear will fall, the giant will fall. America, Russia, and China will play their parts, but their power will not endure. Their collision will shake the world, but it will also reveal its fragility. And in that shaking, the eyes of humanity will turn upward, not to the nations that failed them, but to the kingdom that endures forever. The prophetic showdown is both a warning and a revelation. It warns that the days of peace are fleeting, that the collision of powers is inevitable, that the ambitions of man lead only to destruction. But it reveals that beyond the chaos lies a greater purpose, a higher destiny, an eternal truth. The nations rise and fall, but the kingdom of heaven remains. And so the story ends where it began, not with man's power, but with God's sovereignty. America, Russia, and China may clash, the earth may tremble, the skies may darken, but prophecy declares that this is not the end. It is only the beginning of the unveiling, the moment when the futility of empires is revealed, and the eternal kingdom shines forth. The nations may rage, but they cannot stop what is written. The prophetic showdown will come, and when it passes, only truth will remain.